It began with a dream, not the kind that fades with morning light, but the kind that lingers, sharp, sweating, real, a nightmare so powerful it leapt from one man's mind and carved its way into the history of horror. It gave us a killer who didn't need to chase his victims down dark alleys or hide behind masks. He came for them where they were supposed to be safe, asleep. From real headlines to dangerous sets, from childhood trauma to cinematic invention.
Is God.
This is how a $1.8 million fever dream turned into one of the most iconic horrors ever made. These are 20 weird facts about A Nightmare on Elm Street. Number 1. The spark that ignited Wes Craven's nightmare wasn't pure fiction. It was a chilling headline. Craven once read a Los Angeles Times article about a refugee family whose child refused to sleep, claiming something chased him in his dreams. One night, the boy finally succumbed to sleep, and his parents later heard screams he could never explain. He was found dead. That morbid paradox of dying in your dreams, alive in your body, lost in your mind, became the core engine of A Nightmare on Elm Street. But Craven layered onto that kernel from his own past too. He'd once glimpsed a man walking past his childhood home, who turned and stared, terrifying and uninvited. So before there was Freddy, before the glove, there was a real terror. A boundary between sleep and death Craven dared to cross. That blurred line is what made this film more than a slasher. It plunged into primal fear, the kind that lingers after the credits roll. Number 2. For a film now synonymous with horror, Freddy Krueger is surprisingly fleeting. In A Nightmare on Elm Street, the dream-stalking demon who became one of cinema's most recognizable villains appears on screen for under 7 minutes total, and yet those brief moments burned into pop culture forever. Wes Craven knew that fear isn't in what you see, it's in what you imagine you'll see next. Freddy's presence is built on sound, silhouette, suggestion. The scrape of metal on pipes, the hiss of breath in a dream. That absence becomes anticipation, and anticipation becomes dread. Every glimpse of him, his hat emerging from shadows, the glove rising from a bathtub, the grin slicing through smoke, is like a flash of a nightmare you can't wake from. By keeping Freddy scarce, Craven made him mythic. He's less a man, more a whisper.
Come to Freddy.
A rumor told between dreams. That's why, decades later, we still flinch at the thought of closing our eyes. Number 3. The most shocking moment in A Nightmare on Elm Street isn't a scream, it's a flood. When Glenn, played by a young Johnny Depp, is devoured by his bed and a geyser of blood erupts from the mattress. It's one of the most surreal deaths in horror history. But what most people don't realize is that the entire effect was filmed upside down. The crew literally flipped the bedroom set on its head, mounted the camera to the ceiling, and pumped over 80 gallons of fake blood. Actually a dyed water mixture into the frame. When they triggered the effect, the weight of the liquid threw off the balance, nearly toppling the entire set. Lights sparked, equipment shorted, and the blood poured uncontrollably, soaking everything. Crew members were drenched, slipping on the slick floor while trying not to ruin the take. The result, chaotic and violent, became cinematic poetry. Gravity itself rebelling against reality. It's the perfect dream logic. Up is down, life is death, and a bed becomes a doorway to hell. Number 4. Believe it or not, Johnny Depp almost wasn't in A Nightmare on Elm Street at all. The role of Glenn was originally offered to Charlie Sheen, who turned it down after asking for more money than the production could afford on its shoestring $1.8 million budget. At the time, Depp wasn't an actor. He was a 21-year-old musician tagging along to an audition with his friend Jackie Earle Haley, who, fun fact, would later play Freddy in the 2010 remake. Wes Craven wasn't impressed at first, but his teenage daughter saw Depp's photo and convinced him to cast him, saying, "Dad, he's dreamy." That small decision changed film history. Depp's quiet, nervous charm made Glenn feel real, a regular kid caught in an impossible nightmare. And when that geyser of blood explodes from his bed, it's not just the movie's most shocking death, it's the birth of a Hollywood star. Freddy Krueger ended Glenn, but he accidentally launched one of the biggest careers in movie history. Number 5. Tina's death scene, the one where she's dragged up the wall and across the ceiling, wasn't shot with camera tricks. The crew built a rotating room, mounted the camera to the set, and slowly spun it while actress Amanda Weiss crawled and screamed as if gravity had turned against her. The entire set had to be perfectly balanced, or the rotation could crush crew members standing just out of frame. Lights, blood rigs, and props were nailed down to keep them from falling as the room turned. Wes later said the experience was terrifying. She could barely tell which way was up. The effect still works because it's real. The camera doesn't fake motion. The world itself moves. That's why Tina's death feels so wrong, because it defies physics exactly the way nightmares do. Number 6. The ending of A Nightmare on Elm Street was almost completely different. Wes Craven wanted it to end peacefully. Nancy wakes up, realizes she's conquered her fear, and steps outside into the daylight. Her friends are alive, the nightmare is over. It was supposed to feel like victory, a release after all the tension. But producer Bob Shea had other ideas. He wanted one last scare, a shocking moment that would make audiences jump and leave the door open for sequels. Craven fought hard against it, but the film was already financed through Shea's company, New Line Cinema, so compromise was inevitable. They shot both endings, the hopeful one and the twist. And in the final cut, Freddy pulls Nancy's mother through the front door window. It's abrupt, bizarre, and unforgettable. That single change rewrote horror movie endings forever. Happy endings were dead, and Freddy made sure of it. Number 7. Freddy Krueger's evil wasn't always what we know today. In Wes Craven's original draft, Freddy was explicitly written as a child molester, not just a murderer. Craven wanted to tap into real-world horrors, the idea of innocence violated by a trusted adult. But the film's producers grew uneasy. Around that time, Los Angeles was reeling from several highly publicized child abuse cases, and the studio feared that leaning into that angle would feel exploitative or in bad taste. So, Freddy's backstory was rewritten. He became a child murderer instead. A vengeful ghost haunting the dreams of Elm Street's teenagers. That change did more than sanitize the script. It shifted the story's moral axis. Freddy became a monster born from collective guilt, a physical embodiment of what the parents tried to bury. It turned Nightmare into a fable about denial and consequence, about sins that can't stay buried. The horror wasn't just Freddy's knife, it was what made him possible. Number 8. Freddy Krueger's lair wasn't built on a Hollywood soundstage. It was filmed in a real boiler room deep beneath the old Lincoln Heights jail in Los Angeles. The space was dark, filthy, and full of rusted pipes and dripping walls. Exactly the kind of place you'd expect to meet Freddy. But what the cast didn't know was that the building was also filled with asbestos and would later be condemned for being unsafe. The heat and fumes made filming brutal. Crew members wore masks between takes, and the smell of oil and decay lingered for days. Still, Craven loved the look of the real place too much to fake it. That decision paid off. The grime, shadows, and real danger gave Freddy's world a physical, claustrophobic realism. The horror wasn't just movie magic. It was literally in the air they breathed. Number 9. The famous scene where Nancy is drowning in the bathtub was filmed in a bottomless tub built over an indoor swimming pool. Heather Langenkamp spent as many as 12 hours in that setup during some nights, enduring cold water, limited breath, and tight camera angles. A stunt double, Christina Johnson, performed part of the underwater shots to reduce risk. The bathroom set was constructed above the pool so that when Nancy falls backward, she plunges straight into the water. That gave the illusion she's drowning in the tub itself. But physically, she's falling into deeper water below. For the actor, that meant long hours submerged, holding position, and trusting the crew to time the pulls and cuts precisely. That sequence remains one of the most unnerving because it merges real danger with dream logic. Number 10, one of the creepiest visuals in A Nightmare on Elm Street is also one of the simplest. Nancy running up the stairs as her feet sink into each step, trapped as if the house itself is swallowing her. The effect looks eerie and dreamlike, but the mystery substance holding her back wasn't CGI or special hydraulics. It was a gooey mix of pancake batter and oatmeal. The crew built a hollow staircase from foam rubber, then filled it with the sticky mixture so that each step would collapse under Heather Langenkamp's weight. It was messy, unpredictable, and hard to clean between takes, but it worked. The way Nancy struggles to lift her legs feels painfully real because it was real. She was literally fighting the set. The result became one of horror's most memorable dream sequences. Simple, strange, and unforgettable. Proof that sometimes terror is just breakfast gone wrong. Number 11. That haunting chant, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, wasn't pulled from folklore. It was written by Wes Craven's daughter, Jessica, while she was still in elementary school. Craven wanted something that sounded like a playground song. Innocent on the surface, chilling underneath. Jessica came up with the rhythm and wording, and the crew later recorded it with local children. Their slightly off-key voices made it unsettlingly real. Craven said that the rhyme was the soul of the movie. Proof that even childhood innocence could turn sinister when touched by Freddy Krueger. It's one of horror's most famous sounds, born not from a studio but from a child's imagination. Number 12, that eerie image of the little blonde girl skipping rope, softly singing 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, became one of horror's most haunting visuals. But she wasn't an actress at all. She was actually the daughter of the homeowners whose house was being used for filming Tina's scenes. Wes Craven had wanted a childlike presence to contrast the violence of Freddy's world, a symbol of innocence against corruption. When they couldn't find a professional child actor in time, the homeowner offered his daughter. She skipped rope in her front yard, and the crew captured it in soft focus and slow motion. The result is unsettling, because it feels real. No choreography, no Hollywood polish, just a child at play, oblivious to the danger her rhyme foretells. That moment turned a simple nursery game into a prophecy of death, echoing through every sequel that followed. Innocence and evil forever intertwined. Number 13. Actress Roni Blackley, who played Nancy's alcoholic mother, decided to stay slightly drunk during filming to portray the character's haze authentically. Her performance, slurred, distant, emotionally disconnected, wasn't fake. Blackley said it helped her tap into the sadness of a parent numbing herself to trauma. Wes Craven didn't love the idea, but when he saw the raw vulnerability it brought to the scenes, he let it continue. Her foggy delivery and vacant stares made the movie's family dynamics feel hauntingly real. Freddy might stalk the dreams, but it's the broken adults who made the nightmare possible. Number 14. Freddy Krueger's name wasn't invented for the movie. It came from Wes Craven's real childhood. In interviews, Craven revealed he named his villain after a boy who bullied him in elementary school. He never forgot the fear or humiliation that kid caused. Decades later, when creating his dream killer, Craven turned that childhood trauma into art. It's the ultimate revenge story, quietly immortalizing a tormentor as one of horror's greatest villains. Even the name Freddy feels familiar, friendly, almost childish, which makes it creepier when it comes from a killer's mouth. Craven took something personal, gave it claws, and let it haunt the world. Number 15. The fedora that became Freddy's signature look was inspired by a real man from Wes Craven's childhood. Craven once said that when he was 10 years old, he saw a homeless man in a dirty brown hat stare up at his window one night, and the image stuck with him for life. The man's silent stare terrified him more than anything. And decades later, that memory became Freddy's silhouette. The brim of the hat, the shadowed face, the slow, deliberate movements. Every time Freddy steps out of darkness, that's Craven's childhood fear walking again. The hat wasn't costume design, it was trauma, resurrected. Number 16. Composer Charles Bernstein embedded subtle whispers and reversed sounds into parts of the soundtrack. Tiny, almost subliminal vocal samples that only play for a split second. He wanted the audience to feel uneasy without knowing why. So he layered faint breathing, reverse nursery rhymes, and warped laughter underneath the synth tones. You don't consciously hear them, but your brain registers something wrong, like a shadow at the corner of your hearing. Those microscopic details make the film's soundscape feel haunted, alive, and just slightly too real. It's audio that creeps instead of screams. Number 17. Here's something most fans don't notice until it's pointed out. Throughout the entire movie, the words Elm Street are never once spoken. You'll hear the characters mention their town, their homes, their school, but no one ever says the name of the street where Freddy Krueger's terror began. It's right there in the title, on posters, burned into pop culture, but never acknowledged by anyone in the story. That small detail gives the film a strange, dreamlike feeling, as if the events aren't confined to one neighborhood, but could happen anywhere. Wes Craven later admitted he chose Elm Street precisely because it was one of the most common street names in America, a symbol of suburban normalcy. By never naming it aloud, that normalcy becomes universal and unsettling. It turns Freddy's nightmare into something that doesn't belong to one town, but to every sleeping street in America. Number 18. For continuity, Heather Langenkamp's hair was repeatedly singed, sprayed, and restyled over the course of filming. Between fire stunts, dream sequences, and reshoots,
Maybe we're gonna have
the production used so much hairspray and heat that her hair began to fall out in clumps by the final week. She later joked that Freddy wasn't the only one burning things on set. The constant touch-ups and retakes, paired with long shooting days, took their toll. But they also gave Nancy that frazzled, exhausted look by the film's end. It wasn't all makeup. It was real fatigue. Number 19. Before Robert Englund was cast, Wes Craven briefly considered hiring a giant stunt performer or wrestler to play Freddy Krueger. He imagined Freddy as a hulking, silent monster, more brute than personality. One of the people considered was Kane Hodder, who would later become famous for playing Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th films. But when Craven met Englund, he realized something crucial. Freddy didn't need muscles, he needed menace. Englund's expressive eyes and sly grin made Freddy human, unpredictable, and disturbingly charismatic. The switch changed horror forever, turning what could have been another lumbering killer into a villain who enjoyed the hunt. Freddy didn't chase you, he toyed with you. Number 20. Freddy Krueger doesn't just haunt Elm Street, he crosses into other horror worlds. His iconic razor glove makes a surprise cameo in Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2, 1987, hanging above the toolshed door during a quick scene. This wasn't random, it was part of a friendly creative rivalry between Raimi and Wes Craven. In the first Nightmare on Elm Street, Craven had included the Evil Dead playing on a TV in Nancy's bedroom. Raimi spotted the Easter egg and decided to return the favor, placing Freddy's glove in his movie as a sly acknowledgement of their shared love for surreal, DIY horror. The two directors kept referencing each other for years, building an unspoken bond between their worlds. That one prop turned into a secret handshake for horror fans, a hidden reminder that nightmares travel farther than any one franchise. 40 years later, Freddy Krueger still lives where he was born, between dream and memory, between childhood fear and adult fascination. Every scream, every boiler room, every clawed shadow reminds us that true horror doesn't die. It just waits for us to fall asleep again. Because A Nightmare on Elm Street wasn't just a movie, it was a warning. If you love diving into the madness behind the making of this horror classic, don't sleep on the next one. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and join us for more strange, shocking, and downright weird stories from the darkest corners of film history. Until then, whatever you do, don't fall asleep.